Hello, everybody. My name is Epp Adler, and I'm from Estonia. And welcome to this second part of the webinar series, How do I use stories and storytelling in my educational work? I'm very happy to see you all here. And hello to everybody who is watching the recording. You will get the recording and all the materials that I mentioned in the webinar. And everybody who is here live, then find the chat button at the bottom of the screen and open it. And so this is where you can write all your comments or questions. I also recommend to find a paper and pen because I will give you some questions to think about during this, what I'm sharing. And I will have our second partner, Lilla, helping me. And so she will collect any questions that I might miss. And my aim is to be here to be as helpful as I can for you, but to share my experiences or how I work with stories. And let me just share my screen. My big plan is to, sorry. So I have some slides to make it a bit easier to follow. Okay, so these webinars are part of the Stories in Motion project, which is a strategic partnership between France, Italy, Czech Republic, and Estonia. And we have been, for the past 2 years, sharing and talking about what is stories, what is storytelling, how do we use them, what does it mean, and how do you apply them in the work with adults mainly, but also with young people. But adult education is the focus of our project. I must say the project is about to end, and I think there have been lows and highs, but I must say, looking back, that I think it has been one of the most powerful projects I've ever been part of. It's very small. We only 4 partners, 4 amazing partners, and this was also the idea that triggered this webinar series, that we saw that we have a lot to share, and it would be a waste not to share it with everybody. And so over the past, so we have already, this is the second series, and there will be 2 more. And if you have signed up, you will get all the links, and you can see how different we think about stories and storytelling, and how different we work with them. And I think this is very, very important because storytelling has become super popular. It has become very sexy. Everybody's working with it. Everybody's talking with it. And the threat with this kind of sexy things is that it becomes a thing. And I think storytelling cannot become a thing because storytelling is very natural. It's very organic. And there is no right or wrong way about it. And I think this has been my struggle in this project to actually make sense of it. And so now here I am, and I think I somehow understand more and more what stories and storytelling mean in my work. So just in case, so I hope you see, and it works fine because I can't see the chat at the moment, which is a bit complicated. Oh. Wait. So just I'm trying still constantly learning Zoom. Okay. Okay, so now I see how I can see it. So, but let's start. So one rule about today is I'm not telling the truth. I'm telling my truth as of today. And I'm just sharing how I see it, how I experience it, how I work with it. But it's a constantly moving creature, and it's all the time evolves. So even if sometimes it might hear that I'm very, very strong and I'm telling that this is the truth, then be assured my aim is to trigger your stories and I can share. And if you don't disagree, it's fine. For me, if you don't disagree, it's the perfect opportunity to ask yourself, what do I think and how do I work with it? Because I think my work as an educator is to develop the story of the learners. It's not really about sharing my story, but my story can be a catalyst. So I simply invite you on this journey to think about how you work with stories and how you work with storytelling and what does it mean. And so it will be this discovery. But the idea is not to share any truth. I'm simply sharing things that I have noticed, or what are the things that somehow drive my work or trigger or help me. And I have chosen the specific, So the subtopic or the actual topic of today's webinar I have chosen is how to open someone to your topic, which I think is the key question, because we always have something to say. So when I do a training, when I do a coaching, whatever, there is something I want to say, but it's not important. Well, it is important, but it's more important, how do I open the listener so that it would be possible to actually deliver this message? And so this is my core question. And so I'm sharing my thoughts on this topic, how to open someone to your topic. And there will be 4 parts of this, or 4 topics. So let's say it's 4 messages that I would like to give to you to think about. The first is, it's about the person, always, not about the methods. So it's not about the storytelling. I will tell more. Storytelling is just the bus, but it's all about the person. Then I'm not going to tell, and I think it's very important to move away from the idea of teaching and move more towards creating learning and enabling learning. And we will see why this is so important. Then very, very core, if it's about the person or the learner, but you are the power being. And so which means that the educator is always more powerful than they think, and they always in power position. And I will also share what I see is the responsibility and the task of the educator. So first, simply to see who you are, if you wouldn't mind, just say in one sentence, in a few words, what brought you here and what triggered to take this time to actually be here at the moment. So that I would also, so I can search the chat again. Just take a little, one moment. So storytelling and empowerment, youth work. Very nice. So you can just add your thoughts, but then let's go on. So a little bit about me, who I am and why I work and how I work. So it always has been a difficult thing, what is my label? So currently I say that I'm a self-mastery and self-mystery coach and facilitator. So I run a business, which is adult empowerment, basically. And I help people I think the main thing that I do, I help people love life and they love themselves. Also, for the past 15 years, I have been leading a youth empowerment organization, HEDEST, and Stories in Motion is also part of this organization. And within this, we have done more than 500 projects, whatever the project is, and we have reached a lot of people. And the idea is the same. So in my business, I work with adults. In the association, I work with young people. But the idea is the same, to empower them and to empower their personal story. This is for me very, very important. Then a very important part of my life, I'm a nature conservation volunteer. which I think is has been during the past also almost 20 years one of the main educators for me, because I think the time spent in nature conservation is some kind of an unbelievable metaphorical story to discover what enables what. And it has been, you know, I don't know, I have been helping to make rivers run. And this has given me really the chance to think like how much help does nature need in order to actually flow on its own. And I think it's really the same with people. And so my core research or learning is what enables us and what stops us. And so I think this is the core topic in my work. So these are these kind of 4 titles I use: is self-mastery, self-mystery, story walking. I have very big issue with the storytelling. I don't think I'm a storyteller. I believe I'm a natural storyteller, but I'm so natural that I don't like it as a label. It just is. But story walking is something much more fascinating. And I have discovered that I think somehow my task in this life is to walk through stories, witness them, support them, or simply be there. But I visit stories. And this is fascinating. I'm not a spy in the stories. Sometimes I'm a guide. Sometimes I'm a piece of furniture. But story walking is something that I really love. And I'm also an artist. I write, I whittle wood, I do embroidery. And sometimes I think, well, this actually fills most of my time. But this is something I never show. And so in my work, I think I share my story of becoming me, which has been very complicated. And step by step, I'm learning to be more whole and be more full. I already mentioned that I want to, in my work, I'm helping people love themselves and love life. And so this kind of valuing and enabling life, it is the core thing for me, because I see too many people who are out of life, or they don't feel involved, or they feel estranged. And I think it's very dangerous, because it's, I think not being friendly with yourself makes you not friendly with the world. And this creates unhappy families, unhappy organizations, unhappy groups. And that's why I think this personal empowerment and personal development is so important, because in the end, the idea is to make the whole being together possible. And this is only possible if you can actually, if you have the courage to proactively participate in life. Then this goes down to the, I think life consists of these incredible beings. And it's not very easy to be you, I think, because we are surrounded by opinions. And everybody has an opinion: who is ugly, who is beautiful, what you're supposed to be, what you're not supposed to be, what is a good story, what is a bad story. And so the question is, can I be me? Has also been, I think, a big search in my life. And what I witness, at least from the people I meet, it's a very big question for a lot of people. And so I think as educators, we have unbelievable opportunity to enable people by giving them permission to be and accepting the way they are. And it's not easy. This is something that I think it has to be the aim, but it's really, really hard to do, especially when you have never felt that you can be you. It's almost impossible to allow other people to be them. And so that's why it's a constant dance, and it's a constant process of losing and making mistakes and searching. But, and I think this making stories and enabling stories and validating stories is the strongest way of allowing each of us to simply be me, which is a constant development, which takes me to my third central work, or my central topic that I work with, is that becoming yourself takes a lifetime. There is no such thing as a ready you, or some kind of, yes, there is the essence, but I think we constantly develop and we constantly grow. And every single meeting, every single experience, every single piece of knowledge somehow influences our story. And there are so many people who feel wrong because they have this set, fixed idea what they are supposed to be. And the moment you open this, And this is the moment when you open learning and you enable learning that I can actually constantly evolve, I can constantly change. That's why I said also at the beginning, I'm not telling you the truth. I'm telling my truth as of today. It's a bit different than it was yesterday, and I don't know what will be in the future. And this gives me also, on one hand, power and responsibility, but also freedom, that I can actually go on and I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to prove what I was yesterday because it's not there anymore. And so these are these kind of three core topics that I work with and that interest me, and I love supporting and I love empowering. And all the aim is to make caring and free and playful individuals. And the idea is not to make the world of selfish people, but the idea is to make all these very special, unique creatures dance together and be able to work together. But an orchestra or a group consists of strong individuals who can play and who have the courage to play. Like in an orchestra, it doesn't work if none of them is has the courage to play. And that's why it's necessary that every single person is equally strong, so that we can make these beautiful constellations and everybody can shine. And what is the self-mastery that I talk about? Is dealing with daily life and all the hardships in life and different meanings in life. So these 4 photos that I love, they are made during 2 days in Croatia 2 years ago on my trip. And as you can see, in 2 days, I visited all seasons. And when I came back, I was asked what was the weather like. So I can't answer, but this was the truth story. So how do you say this story in 1 sentence? And I think the truth is you can't. And that's why it's also, on one hand, I have to deal with this. I have to even, like, practically, I have to pack for this kind of weathers. And when the weather's a surprise, I have to somehow deal with it. But then in the end, when I get the feedback from others or the questions of others, then this can make my story wrong, because I can't tell, I don't know how to explain this story, because it's very, very hard. And so this is the constant interaction between my experience, how I can share it, and how do I deal with all the reactions and reflections that I get from other people. And so this is the game of this self-mastery. And maybe a few key definitions that I base my work on is that I like the concept of teaching that says that teaching is enabling learning. And this means that the core task of teaching is not stuffing information in, but it's actually getting it out and allowing it to come out. And I think this is much more love-based approach, because this means that I believe that everything is in there with you. Yes, I can add and I can support, but I allow it out. Teaching of stuffing in means that you are small, you are nothing, and you don't know yet, which means I have to put things in. So this is also, I think, each of us has to make a decision which approach is something that is natural to you simply. I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong, because everybody does the right thing the best in their form. And then teaching is a type of leadership. And what I see when I work with a lot of educators is that they are afraid of the idea of leadership and they don't accept the task. And I think this is when the mistake or the problem starts, which means you don't take the responsibility of the influence. And this is when you say that I'm nothing, but I'm actually a power playing on you. So that's why it's very important to understand that teacher is always a leader. And leadership is deliberate influencing. And that's the same with teaching. And I believe that our greatest capacity is to influence the behavior of our own and of the others. And we do it whether we like it or not. Whether we are silent, whether we talk, whether we scream, we always influence the behavior of other people, and also we constantly choose how we behave ourselves. So which means that we are very powerful beings. And it's always a power game. And power is, and in this case, I'm not saying that power is good or bad, it simply is. We simply influence. And I think the moment you accept that you are very powerful, this should bring the good fear of taking responsibility and trying to be kind, because teaching can be very violent. I think all of you know this, you have all experienced it. And even in the best sense, it can be violent, because learning actually means that I destroy some kind of previous knowledge. And this is violent as such. And that's why I think as an educator, it's really necessary to feel my power and be enough scared of it, so that it doesn't make me insecure, but it makes me aware that I try to be as good as I can at this moment, taking into account everything that might happen. And that, as you all know, when you work with people, anything can happen and there are no guarantees unless you shut them out, which is this bad way of teaching, that I make sure that you say nothing, and then nothing bad can happen. So it's and I think it's also like why I use this word is not only this power, but it's really the game. Because I think if you learn the game and you start playing it, it's a fantastic game, but it's a power game. And I think it's really necessary as an educator to realize this, the power that you have. Even if you don't take it, you are given this. So it's not a choice, but simply by being in this position and being in this role, you already have the power stance. So this is simply something to consider. Okay, so as I don't see the chat window, so let me just check if there is anything so we can go on. Okay, everything seems to be fine. So let's go to the 4 points that I wanted to share. The first that we start with is how I see what is the responsibility and task of the educator. So, and one thing is the background is constantly the story and storytelling. And what do I mean by this is I believe as an educator, I help to build the story of the learner. So which means I'm not talking about stories and storytelling as separate thing. I'm constantly playing with the story. When I come here in this webinar, I'm sharing my story, and this is constantly evolving, and my story will somehow influence your story. And so I think it is the dance or the interaction between the story of the educator, and later I will show how I bring in a lot of my stories, and my story influences a lot of your stories. So it's not a simple game, and it's a very magical game. It's very mystical. We never understand it completely, but it's a game. And that's why I don't talk really about storytelling as a method as such, because I believe that it's a constant background playing. So what are the responsibility and tasks of the educator? So first and foremost, and very, very often neglected or taken for granted, is the space or the room. So learning happens somewhere. And I believe the creation of space, protection of space, and keeping the safety of space is the ultimate task of an educator. It's a playing space. This is the space where things can happen. And if you don't build it, if you don't protect it, basically nothing can happen, because there can be no meeting, and there can really be, it's not safe to somehow dissolve, because like I said, I think learning is always dissolving. Rewriting your story, you have to delete the previous story. And this is psychologically super, super dangerous thing, because everything rearranges. So, and very often I think this space keeping is also not taught. So a lot of people are not aware of it. And very often I think you don't even have to learn it, because I think we sense it so naturally. The only thing that you have to do is really be aware of it. And I think then you start automatically doing it. The same is also when we say that, I don't know, the space, somehow the room was, I don't know, thick, or the air was thick. There are a lot of expressions that we use about it. And I believe it's a very, very natural thing that we sense if we are aware of it. Then second responsibility of the educator is keeping the time. And this I see a lot what happens, I think especially with the work with children and young people, that the people in power position assume that the learner has to keep time. I think it is my responsibility to take time and not steal time, because I think it's when the learner gives you time and energy, you have to really, really respect it. And when you go into the learning process, I think you all know you lose sense of time. You have no idea how much is 5 minutes or how much is 1 hour. If you love doing something and you're really, really into it, I mean, there is no sense of time. You're just in there. So that's why sort of the facilitator is the one who takes care of this structure, which also involves time. Then I think that is also too often I see that is taken for granted. The responsibility of the topic is with the educator or the teacher or whoever you call yourself. And this means that you have to make sense of it. You have to put it into context. You have to intrigue. You have to make it relevant. Nobody has to care about the topic. Nobody has to have automatic interest in your topic. Whatever, if you work with adults, if you work with young people, it is always the task of me to explain why I'm doing it, why it's interesting, why I think it's relevant, why it's necessary. And so, and it's not something for granted. If you don't make this connection, then it's not possible to listen to you, basically. And so this is also a lot about the storytelling, and this is where you have to be the storyteller. You have to, like, I have to understand why you tell this, why you tell this to me. And so it's, and that's why it becomes intriguing. And that's why I can enter the story and maybe try out something, even if I'm scared. Then this also brings the same already I mentioned, that the moment you intrigue with your story, you build contact. And I think building contact is the task of the educator. If you as the educator don't know who the people are, then basically I think you can't prepare and you can't actually say what they are, because if you miss out, I don't know if your audience is entrepreneurs or they are teachers or they are factory workers or they are young people who are deciding, like thinking what I want to study. You have to, I mean, I think you can talk about exactly the same thing, but the door is different. So you have to place the same thing into another context. And so this means that it's, the story stays the same, the storyteller stays the same, but maybe the trigger word is different to make it somehow approachable. And this is why it's necessary. And this is when it comes to the self-awareness and the thinking ability of the educator. Do you, like, does it make sense to you why you make it? And so it's, and I think at least from my experience or in my practice, my core practice or my core preparation is that I have to think through why I want to tell you what I'm going to tell. If this doesn't, okay, if this becomes clear to me, it's super easy. It doesn't mean what's the structure, but it just makes sense to me and it's somehow relatable. If I'm confused, believe me, no, everybody is confused. So take extra time for this. And so I already mentioned before, methods are buses. Storytelling is a bus. And I think any kind of tools you use, methods you use, games you use, they are buses. They are delivery mechanisms. The idea is that you want to take your learner from one place to the next place. It's a journey, it's a trip, it's a scary thing. Maybe they've never been there, they don't know where you go. And you are the driver. So which means you take full responsibility also for the safety of the people on the bus. At least for me, it helps when I think about it as a bus. One thing, it's funny, but the other thing is that it's also, at least for me, it somehow separates the learner and the method from each other. Because there are a lot of educators who love methods. And the only thing that disturbs their wonderful work are the people on the bus. And so this is where the conflict starts. When people that you work with become your obstacle, then the focus might be in it could be, let's say, it could be a little bit tweaked. Then at least with my leaders in my camps, what I consider the most important task of educators is taking care of the feeling of success. So wherever you are taking them, whatever are the methods, you have to give the feeling of success to people. And this is a responsibility of the educator. This means that I have to see how people do. And here I don't mean that the success comes out of the result. Sometimes the result is that I didn't leave. Because usually I leave. Usually when it's hard, I leave. Or usually I'm dropped out. So that's why I think when you give a task, you have to really see if everybody's able to do it. If you see that they are struggling, you have to tweak it, make it less, make it shorter, make it easier, but make sure that they will able to follow through to have some kind of feeling of success. It doesn't mean it has to be easy, but you have to get to some kind of happy end. And I think this happy end is this is the task of the educator. This includes that I have to remind you how much time is left to make sure that you will be able to finish. And this I see what is being done a lot, that there is this power play that, this feeling, but you knew it and I told you and I mentioned it so many times, but you're not really helping. So some people have to be actually carried through so that they can have the feeling of success, because believe me, learning is only possible based on the feeling of success. If it hurts, I don't want to go there anymore. And at least in my work, okay, this might sound like too much, but I can say that like majority of people nowadays are afraid of learning because they have had very bad experiences with teachers, with trainings, with school, which means that they are actually afraid and they can't make errors. They can't, they're afraid of bad feedback because they have seen others getting it. They have got it themselves, which means that I think majority of my work is actually going through this story. And so that's why it's giving people the feeling of success, I think, is the core. And very important that all this work has to be in the service of and for the learner, and not for the methods, not for the topics, not for the institutions, curriculum, or the people connected to the learner. And although this sentence might sound stupid or funny or whatever, at least what I witness, this is the case. I think in most cases, the learner is not the focus, because there is a project that runs it, there is a money that runs it. Some educators are fascinated with their methods. They are fascinated with the topic, which means that they are so fascinated with something else that the learner becomes the obstacle. In schools, it happens that teachers are so scared of parents for right reasons that the parents, like servicing the parent, becomes the core. But it should always be the learner. And I think as a leader and as an educator, I have to make sure that I have space enough in my life to make sure that the learner is in the center. And it's not always easy because things happen in my life, things happen around me, things happen in my system. And so the only thing I can do is to make sure that I can be there for the learner as much as I can. But it should always be, I think, the focus, because otherwise there is no point. It's if I get my satisfaction out of using the methods, then I think I lose a very important point. So, and as I already said, that so methods also, when we talk about any kind of, I know many of you have been to a lot of storytelling trainings and using stories. They are all methods and they are all theories, and all these are simply ways to give structure. They enable learning. They are ways of thinking, the ways of seeing things. And all these models make sort of the reality processable. We can give the thinking structure. We can give meaning to what I see. But it's important to understand that this is not the reality. It's not the final truth. And as I already said many, many times, that if there are educators too fascinated with topics and too fascinated with methods, then they get the center stage. And which means that I start assuming that you have to start becoming as fan of some kind of an approach as I am. And why a lot of people do that is because when somebody teaches you something, it's validated, it's controlled, there is some kind of a guarantee, it seems. And this means that I start protecting myself, but that's the way it has to be. And so, which means that it's identifiable, it's safe because it's validated by some authority. And that's why it's very, very easy to love it. And that's why I think it's necessary to question it all the time. When you start loving something too much, you become blind. And especially in education, you become super blind if you start loving something too much. And that's why this critical thinking is your best friend, and you have to question all the time. And I think confused, in that sense, confused teacher about models, theories are the best, because they allow the space that the learner can also search. But if the teacher becomes fixed, then there is no space anymore. So don't be afraid of not knowing and not being clear and not really understanding what you're doing in your work. Because I see it, I think it's the moment you show this, one thing is you're vulnerable, which means you're authentic and honest. But the other thing is that you actually leave space for the learner, because you also, and also I think more and more in nowadays world, by not being completely ready, prepared and clear, you demonstrate that it's fine not to be perfect. And more, I think it's becoming more and more valuable. So make mistakes, I don't know, have ugly slides, have mistakes on your slides, and demonstrate that it's fine, the world will not end, and that it's, the story will go on. So, and already, yes, I already said, I think we have to, don't have to go through this, that the method is simply a bus, and you have to maintain it, you have to get to know it. And be curious. Maybe one thing from my own experience is that stay curious with the methods. I have had several methods that I stopped using after, I don't know, 156 time of using, because I simply never saw some kind of danger. And then suddenly with somebody, I see how bad method it is. But before it worked. But this means that I have grown on and now it doesn't work anymore. So be flexible with your methods. The methods, and the other thing is also know the process, don't be stuck on the result. Because this is a way how you can allow the method to surprise yourself. And this is, it's a very funny thing if it's, because if you give the method to participants and they do something with it, I've learned so much, I've got so many ideas, like what else I can do. So don't over plan and don't over facilitate methods, any kind of methods. Okay, how is it so far? I have to check my chat. Is it going okay? Any questions? I have been now talking a long time. So you can, let's do a minute break. So you can reflect on this, a lot of information. I hope you're all still here. Seems. So I think it seems okay, good. So let's go on so I can show you all my slides and so we can. So, okay. So the second point is, the first one was the tasks of the educator. Then the second one, the most important one and the most hard one, is that the learner has to come first, always. And okay, the very first has to be you, because you are the one who is working with them. So it's a little bit like first aid. If you are not fine and if you don't know what to do, the learner can't learn actually. So in that sense, let's say it's the first is really taking care of yourself. The self-maintenance, the self-mastery of educator, I think this is another topic, super important topic. But when you are already in action, the learner has to come first and you have to take care of them. And the learner is a highly complex being, the complex being who will destroy your story. You might have done very good preparation, but they are too slow, they are too fast, they are wrong questions that you haven't planned for, so they can destroy anything. So there is we have some very nice quotes in the Stories in Motion Facebook page, and so this was one that was inspired me about this topic, was that whatever it is, make it human. It's actually very easy to, it's really, really easy to take human out in any kind of story and storytelling. So some key points about learner comes first. One thing, important thing to know is that they want to learn and they want to grow. And this is one of their basic needs. But it's not that easy. But this is the core, that this is there is this desire, there is this need, always. The second part is, which is even more important, is that they are afraid and they don't trust you. Because you are not first. And you are just another person on the long, long line of influencers in their life. And you don't know what they were. There is a very, very high chance that they have had negative experiences, or I said before, maybe they haven't had it, but they've heard about them and they've seen them. And this is an equal big source of fear. And as an educator, you come to push something on them, which means they don't trust you. They have to take care of themselves. And so this fear and not trusting is a way to protect yourself. And I think for this, you have to be super respectful. And so, which means that this is a game now. How do I go through this fear so that I can actually reach this desire to learn and grow? And I believe in working with people, this is the only thing that you actually have to learn, is in order to understand the fear and to understand the fragility of the trust and how to tap into this desire to learn and grow. So very important thing also to understand, there is absolutely no obligation to let you in. Like I said before, there is no obligation for the learner to be interested in what you have to say. They don't want to have to listen to you, and they don't have to let you actually in. It's something you have to earn the right to do. You sort of have the pre-right by having this power position that you have said that I have something to say. But this means you have to really take care of this trust, and you have to build this trust, because trust is sort of the result, but it's not an obligation. And I think a lot of people forget this, because I understand why they forget this, because it's scary and it's hard and it's complicated. It's very complicated. And so it's easier to not see this topic than to struggle with it. And I think this is when you can lose out a lot. I think it's better to be aware of it and not know what to do with it, and you do it naturally well, than to deliberately avoid it. And because then you overpower. You don't use your power in a kind way, but you start overpowering. So that's why it is a little bit, I think it's a necessary topic. And I know it's a very complicated and scary topic, because this is a topic that might trigger the feeling I'm not enough. I'm not doing it right. What happens if I don't know what to do? And that's why it is a very sensitive topic, but a very important topic. So as already mentioned, your topic is not the most important one, and it's definitely not the only one in the life of your learners. And I think this is also what is done a lot, that people assume that somehow, all your attention is only for me. I can only give from my heart as much as I can, but I know that the time that you give me, it's in constant competition with a lot of other tasks, a lot of other topics that are relevant to you somehow. And so I think, like in this modern media age, any minute that you get, use it well. And that's why it's like, have courage to make shorter things, because there is, a lot of people want to do very, very long things, but actually we don't have time for this anymore. And the very important point about the learner is that they already have a story with your topic, your story, and your position. They have previous experience. Everybody, and this is one thing, it doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter if it's a 12-year-old or a 7-year-old. They have the story about your story. If you come as a teacher, They have previous experience. They already have decided what you are. When you come with a topic, they have a story with it. Even if they've never ever been in touch with this topic, this means it's a strange topic, which can mean not for me. And that's why it is sort of, you go in on top of this story, which might be very negative. You can't assume this, but you have to take it into account. And you can't assume that there is no story. And this is the place where these stories, you have to build a place where the stories can meet and the learner can make a decision. Do I continue listening? Just listening. I'm not letting it in, but I'm listening to it. This is the beginning. But it's necessary to understand that they have a story. And you are not the first, and you are not the only one. So, and this is also something that I know it's scary for beginners, especially because we think when we start, we think we have to be perfect, we can't make mistakes, and we have to know everything. The truth is, you simply know the things that you know. And the people that follow you are the ones who believe that you have something to tell, because the ones who don't follow you, they don't believe this. So it is. It's a process of letting go and simply trusting yourself and believing what you know and trying to be as good as you are. This is very important. You have to be as good as you can be, and you develop yourself constantly. So it's not this kind of stagnant. It's not this passive position, but you take the responsibility of trying to be as good as I am at this point. So a very important point is assuming. Which is done a lot, and I have collected a few very like quite popular assumptions that I've seen used by educators on very different levels of work with different people. One thing is that educators believe that that they say to the learner, you have chosen to be here, so this means that you must be interested. Not the case. Very often when you work like in organizations, in schools, these people have not chosen to be there, they have been told to be there. And so, which means, again, you have to create, and that's why I'm saying by this creating the space, a safe place where they can trust you is your responsibility, because maybe they were forced to be there. Then the assumption, because you are here, you must be interested in my topic. Again, there are very different reasons why people come to the places where they are. See if you are. And then the third, because they're related, the third one is, you know where you are. From my experience, a lot, at least I don't know, half of the groups, they don't know where they are. They know that they signed up to something some time ago, but they don't really remember where they got the email, and they only got the reminder that they have to go, but they don't really know where they are. So that's why it is also like, don't be angry with people. It's very normal, again, because we are overwhelmed. We have so many topics and we come for very different reasons. And that's why I think it's necessary to give the floor to all these reasons. Like, there are so many teachers I meet who come to trainings because it's a break from the normal schoolwork. They are not there because of me. They are not there because of my topic. Yes, the topic seemed okay, relevant among other trainings, but they are there to have a day off. And I think it's necessary for me to respect this and to be as useful as I can within my topic in this need. But from my experience, there are so many trainers who assume that people have to be interested in them. And they don't hear what is the actual story of the learner. And from my experience, when I hear this story, I can do whatever, because then I can actually help. But if I come with my story of what I think you should know, I lose half of the story. So it is, so be careful and allow people to be there because they wanted a day off. And you are simply the person animating the space, disturbing, in other words. So then there are a lot of people who are ready to teach too much and assume that it's, I think people need to be reminded that they know something and not to be taught so much new things. But we have to be somehow that I know that, oh, fine, I didn't know that I'm so good. Then there is a lot this game of, but you are all adults, or the same is, or that you are all kids. And I think they are both very dangerous because they are both labeling. So because when I say that you are an adult, then it means that I assume that you have to be some way and know some things. And if I say that you are, oh, you are so young, this means that I assume that you don't know, which means if you know, I will be disappointed. And so it is, it's also this kind of, and this shuts doors. So it's, so they are simply humans. They are not adults or kids, it doesn't matter. And what is done with kids, so maybe this is not so relevant here, but there is this, that the childhood is the best time to sow seeds. Yes, of course it is, but this means that everybody thinks that they can do it. And which means that you overpower people. So allow them to be humans sometimes also. You don't have to constantly, I don't know, change them into some direction. Okay, let's see, because I want to try to finish on time today. So some types of learners and forms of self-protection. So this, as I said, like, so what are the ways how what is afraid learner can look like? The first type I call the power types. So these are the people who come with their way of being. I don't know whether they always have to have a water bottle in their hand or they have to meditate before, but they somehow they say rules, they set rules, or they say that I'm not a morning type, so that in the morning session I'm not very active, which means that they have a strong need of saying how you have to take them into account. They're very fascinating types. It's very interesting, but people, probably you all know them. I don't know, somebody has to have a koala on their side or have to have the pink water bottle, or there are all kinds of things that people do. Then the second are these powerless. They are somehow my favorite ones. They are the ones who have been convinced that they're stupid. They believe that it's too hard. They are afraid to try. And these are the people who, from my experience, they lack the feeling of success. So they sabotage themselves by not giving them the chance because they are afraid to be wrong again. So it's better that I put myself down before you do it again. So this is where this empowerment comes incredibly, like it's the most important. Then there are learners that we call the squirrels. These are the overeagers, you know, the organizers. At the moment you give them a paper, they already have designed it. Or these are the always volunteers, and they are the ones who come and validate if they did it correctly, and they need the validation constantly. So they are the ones that I say that you have to relax them, and you have to say that no, you can't do it, and you have to wait so that you can relax them somehow. Then there are the internal students who love you constantly because they are never good enough, so which means that they constantly have to learn. And they are a bit dangerous students as well, because they like to be fans of teachers, because then they get they feed sort of their inadequacy, and they believe that there is this guru who knows better, but they can never be the guru themselves. Again, it's a case that actually is very similar to powerless ones, that you actually have to empower them. And the last one is, I call them the examiners. These are these people who come to your learning to examine you, to see how you're doing, to control how you use the methods, because they know somehow how it's supposed to be. And they also this kind of, they actually also quite powerless. They use it in a powerful way, but they are quite powerless because they believe that there is a perfect way, and anybody who is not perfect cannot be trusted. So these are the people who are very often that you have to actually allow them to make mistakes, to be imperfect, and this is the way to empower them. And that's how they actually it's they're very, very interesting. They're very smart always. Okay, so the last point is so enable learning and don't teach. And I think this is something that I have already said many, many times. So the idea is to really to invite the learner to play, to try, to discover, to care. And the trying is the most important word, and playing as well. This means that you have to facilitate space where mistakes are allowed, where basically mistakes don't exist, because everything is learning. The question is, do we give it meaning? But make sure that there are no errors, especially when you use storytelling methods. It's not possible to make an error because everything becomes part of a story. The question is, do we see the beauty in it? And this is, again, if you're too stuck how it's supposed to be, then there are mistakes. But if you're open about it, then anything goes and anything becomes a possibility to learn. So again, build the trust and take care of the trust. It's a fragile result that you can lose very easily. I believe that all of you have experienced, I have experienced so many times how easy it is to do trust. I make a stupid thing and I understand I destroy trust and I have to start from the beginning, and it happens. Forgive yourself, try again, just be kind. And so know your own story about your topic and share this story, and then it becomes possible for the learner to start building their story. It's not about your story is correct, but simply it's this kind of interaction of stories, and that like allow it. And as I also like this I already mentioned also, so prepare and don't prepare at the same time. Leave space for surprise, know what you want to do, know the structure, know the end result. So understand where you want to get, but leave space for thinking, leave space for trying, leave space for reaction, leave space that you notice something, and then you can react to it. If you're too planned and too prepared, there is no space to make any turns and to change the sort of to play along with the story that is being created in this space. So don't over prepare. And always the question is, what comes first, the question or answer, knowing or curiosity? I think they have to come together. Some things come from questions, some things, and you also have to, because you are the educator, so you know, which means you can raise questions. So I think it comes from both ways, and again, leave space so that this information can come from both sides. Okay. And yes, this is the last point that I wanted to say, the power of educator. So as I've said already before, you are always in the power position. Whether you like it or not, the learner knows that you are the educator, which means this already makes it power position. And the other part is also that you always bring your experience, you bring your stories, your fears, your insecurities into the space. And in order for them not to drive you, you have to know them. And that's why I think the self-mastery, taking care of yourself as an educator, is the key. Because then you can somehow let go of this story and allow all these stories come to the learners. Because otherwise you have to shut them down, because you have to shut yourself down. Because either you overplay the situations or you have to hide. And both of them are obstacles of this kind of creative communication and creative storytelling, or creativity anyway. And but maybe it's very, very important to like mention again is that we are many, many stories. And we are not just one story, but we are many stories. And these stories, they relate and they dance together. And if you know them, then you can notice them. And sometimes they do good things, sometimes they do bad things. So you can respond to this, but it's necessary to understand that you are a lot of stories. And as an example, I was just thinking when preparing this webinar, like what are my driving stories in my work? And so there is this joyful and laughing story in me, which is something that always motivates me and it intrigues me. But at the same time, the thing that actually feeds my work a lot is this small, insecure, invisible, and confused story. And this is it's a very, very big story in my life, that I'm nothing. Then it has always been, since I was small, there is this courageous, ever curious, and say yes to anything story. So it's the adventurous story. And this story goes side by side with this trapped orphan, not being loved and trying to please anybody story, which again, you know, it's small, it's a dark story, but the way it plays together with this courageous, this hero story, it's been beautiful. I mean, it's awfully complicated and awfully hard, but it is incredibly beautiful story and very inspiring story in my work. And of course, there is this obsessive observer and learner story. and a powerful communicator and influencer story, which has been a very hard story to accept in my case. And so these are simply examples that I am all these stories. I can't say which I'm more or which I'm less, but these are the ones that actually feed all my work. They feed my overall story in my work and in my life. And I mean, they are wonderful and awful and everything, but that's all me. And I think this is the thing that I have given permission that yes, these are part of me. I might love them or hate them, it doesn't matter, but these are simply my stories. And you can, we don't do it now, but you can think like what kind of stories actually drive you? And what are the, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you think your topic is important? Why are you interested in the storytelling thing? There is a story behind something that from your life and from your growth drives you. And when you tap into this and you start using it, believe me, you become super powerful and you become very influential because you become very relatable and you become very human. And in your way, in your kind of way, human, which is the most beautiful way of being a human, that you're not some other kind of being human, but your way of being human. And we have come to the end. So a few minutes over, but a few things I want to say. So again, it's about the person, not about the method. You build the story of the person and you help somehow to validate it, enhance it, develop it, whatever you do with it. But the method is the bus. So enable learning, and the starting point is think about what could enable learning and create learning. So allow people to come out of themselves. And don't be fascinated with giving so much information, which I'm doing at the moment. Then believe or know that you're more powerful than you think, which means you have to be very responsible about it. And also, so know your story. And when you accept your own story, you become curious of the stories of others. And then you become respectful as well. And when you're allowed into visiting these stories, I think this is a privilege. And it's this kind of privilege that you have to respect. So there is the constant play of responsibility and respect, I think, has to be the backbone of our work as educators, because we are influencing other people, and we can do it in a negative way and we can do it in a positive way. And it is my choice what I want to be. And I have to make this choice every single moment when I'm doing this work. And it's a constant process, because when I get tired, I can start becoming mean, which means, again, it's my task to take care of myself, that when I'm actually doing my influencing work, I could be not mean, but kind. And so, which means that you have to make this choice every single moment, again and again and again. So this is the total of what I wanted to say. If you have any questions, you can let me know. I will also send you the slides and the recording. But so thanks to this webinar, because a few years ago I stopped doing international work, but now over many years I decided that I will make again a course in English, and this time first time in a course in English, not in Estonian. And so I'm offering, if anybody is interested, a 4-week course called The Power of Stories for Educators. And so it's 4 weeks. We start the beginning of May. And the themes, well, because I will tweak them based on the needs of the participants. But at the moment, the idea is that the topics are learning, what drives us, how we protect ourselves, and planning and leading to a happy end. So these are all from the point of view of how to support the learning and how to develop the story of the learner. And how we'll do it. So we'll have weekly webinars, you will get emails, and there will be little assignments to help to understand your story as an educator. And yeah, and there will be some materials as well. So if you're interested, so it will be, so the whole overall price is 99 euros. And if you're interested, then you can sign up on this link. I can put it after in the chat as well, and I will send it on the email. It will be open, registration will be open until the end of next week. And yes, so you don't have to pay immediately because I don't have, my systems are a bit more old fashioned, so it will take time. But this is a link. If you're interested to go on and find out more, then I can, you can simply sign up there and I will send you more information. And so you can make a decision after. But this is simply to get the emails of people who would be theoretically interested in this course. Okay. And the last but not least, we will have 2 more free webinars in the Stories in Motion series. In 2 weeks, at the same time, same place, will be Lilla Gösi from Hungary, who lives in Italy, who is a fantastic artist and graphic facilitator and a trainer. And she will share her thoughts on how she uses stories in storytelling. And then 2 weeks later from there will be Emmanuel Mapus from France, who is living sometimes in Greece as well, who is an unbelievable storyteller, musician, magician, player, trainer, and also the founder of or the initiator of this project that we are all part of at the moment. So if you are interested, and then you have registered already and you will get the links, but you can also share if anybody is could be interested that you know. So, and this is all the information I wanted to say. And now I will stop sharing my screen. So, and let's take a few minutes for questions as well. Or how are you doing? Are you still alive? I know that there was a lot of information. Okay, so I see one question. So how do you manage diversity and the conflicts in the groups? Well, let's give the good answer is that it's a big topic. It's a separate topic. But in general, so the groups I work with are very diverse. And because I have, for the past 20 years, I've worked a lot with international groups, so with all kinds of European projects. Then I think it took me a long time before it was non-diverse. And in my practice, I take it into account that they're diverse, but the starting point is that they are humans. So I don't go on their nationality or any kind of points of diversity. I want to know them as humans. And the easiest way for this is that they have a name. They have a first name, and it's my task to know this name and to call them by this name and to make an extra effort to know this name. And this already, and I think when you put the person first before all the things that make them diverse, whether it's, I don't know, medical things, any kind of things, and if you make contact with the actual person, everything becomes possible from my point of view. And it's important to actually manage the stereotype. The stereotypes are very important because they somehow help me make sense, but they can never be in the conversation. And when I talk about this taking care of the space, I don't allow discussions based on these aspects. They can be curious about them, but I actually manage, I interfere. So I make sure that people actually interact with humans, not labels, some kind of diverse labels. And from this, and the same is with conflicts. If it goes on personal level, simply the question is, what is the issue? But keep people. And I think leading becomes possible then, and teaching becomes possible then. And very often the problems start when, well, the main reason why conflicts actually come is that people feel that their sense of importance is taken away. And this also means that if I somehow assume based on your nationality something, whether it's good or bad, this already means that you as person is not important, and you start fighting. You have to start protecting yourself. So if you stay away from these label levels and remain on the human level, it's possible. At least from in my experience, everything is possible then. Okay. But then, if you have no more questions at the moment, you all have my email. If you have any questions, I will send you the link and the slides and the recording. And yes, if you have any later comments or questions, or anybody who is watching the webinar as a recording, I'm here, and contact me. And it has been wonderful to share all this. And even wonderful for me, as always, what I like about these things is that I have to think these things through and to make them into some kind of structure. So I recommend all of you always say yes to these kind of things, even if it seems scary, because everything happens then. So thank you so much, and enjoy your day, and enjoy the maybe the last weeks of this total special time. For me, it has been very inspiring. I have got a lot of things done, and I'm very scared that it will end. So use this time, this unbelievable time, to make sense of anything you do in this unbelievable gift of time that we have been given. And take this time, because I see a lot of people who are somehow panic and they think they have to overdo things. I think it's a time that's possible. It's full of potential, and potential for relaxing, and potential for making sense and finding courage. So simply have courage to be kind and choose kindness always, even if it's hard. Like, rather lose and let go, but feed your soul and feed your heart, and have courage to be kind. And then the stories can open and stories can grow. Thank you very much, and until next time.